This is the Howard's Way podcast from Antique Dust.
In today's episode, episode 2 of series 1 of Howard's Way, we learn some exciting things. Polly Urquhart's very glamorous daughter arrives in Tarrant. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Rob.
And together we are Antique Dust.
Woo!
Yep.
Yay.
So, we have just finished watching episode 2 of series 1 of Howard's Way. And it was gorgeous! I loved it. So, this episode was first aired in September 12th in 1985 on BBC One. It was a staple of Sunday night viewing. And the story so far, Tom, who is the main protagonist character, Tom Howard, has lost his job at Southern Aviation. He's got his hand out, but he's held it back as a secret for about a month before he announced it in last week's episode. Jan, sort of suburban housewife who's been working like a dog in that kitchen, buying things for the gorgeous family home, is naturally a little bit disappointed. The children are a bit nonplussed. So, what did you think of this episode?
Me? I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this episode.
It was very good. I mean, again, the scripting was super tight.
And it was well paced.
Yeah, and it is very, very interesting. We learn a little bit more about the Mermaid Boatyard. We've got Jack and Avril. Avril is Jack's daughter. And the episode starts with Jack doing sort of a foregone conclusion that Tom is going to is going to buy into the boatyard. Everything's going to be wonderful. However, Avril doesn't want Tom to lose all his money because they're currently in huge amounts of debt.
£184,000 owed to the bank, and this was in the days when that was a lot of money.
I know. Now it's just like 2 Costas and a blueberry muffin.
If you're lucky.
So Avril wants Tom Howard to go into this with his eyes wide open. Doesn't want to sort of shilly-shally him.
Yes, doesn't want him being fleeced by her roguish father.
A roguish father. I mean, in fairness, Jack is lovely. He is absolutely really super. He's a little bit gruff. Obviously, his back's up against the wall, so he's doing everything he can to save his...
And he's very single-minded and perhaps a little bit deluded.
I think so. He thinks he's very old school. And in fairness, I really, really have a huge appreciation for Jack. I mean, he's old school. He hasn't really quite got to grips with things moving on. However, he's got tradition, and I think I quite like that. It's just sort of So I really he's struggled to get to the top. Well, we'll know more about that backstory sort of in future episodes. With the episode also starts with Leo and Lynn having a conversation about Mum, as in Jan Howard, and how she's slightly overreacting and blah, blah, blah.
And they're clearly concerned about the future of their parents' marriage.
Yeah, exactly.
And rightly so.
Yeah, and because in fairness, Jan has been the homemaker, and the home is lovely. It's very, very 80s fashion, and she's styling. And Jan is still giving the cold shoulder to Tom, because there was quite an awkward scene with them in the living room with Jan reclining with her legs up on the sofa very nonchalantly, and Tom flicking through his Robert Lyndon adventure book, but it just looked a bit frosty. And I think
I did like their fireplace though.
Yeah, the fireplace was really nice. It's like ingle. It was really weird. I mean, that fireplace does not go in the external of that house. I mean, everyone who doesn't know me, I'm an estate agent. I've been an estate agent for 20-something years, and the architectural element of having that fireplace does not correlate to the house, the external bits of the house, because if you look where the chimneys are in the house, that unless there's a hidden chimney somewhere, but it does look very nice.
Overthinking, perhaps.
I'm overthinking a little bit,
Overthinking.
but you could imagine that would be a fabulous home to socialise at, sort of for Christmases and things like that, because it's an executive wife's home.
Yes, I'm sure the Howards have had some lovely Christmases with mince pies and carol singers and all of that
I imagine
malarkey.
so.
All the neighbours round drinking sherry and.
In faurness, I think as a
eating
child,
mince
I'd always
pies.
fantasised that Jan Howard would be my mother, because I think it's. In fact, no, actually, sort of watching this episode, we were introduced to a bit more of Polly Urquhart. And in fairness, I think I would much prefer Polly to be my mother, because I think Polly Urquhart...
She's a man-eater.
She's
a man-eater.
gorgeous.
I would burst into song, but nobody wants that. But she's a man-eater, Jonathan.
So in the last episode, Polly made a little bit of a squeeze at Tom to congratulate him on his win. And in this episode, Polly Urquhart has a little conversation, because she's going into town to pick up her daughter Abby, who's been at finishing school in Switzerland, as you do. So,
yes.
And she bumps into Tom. Tom thanks her because she's sort of arranged for a job to be offered to him if he wants it, designing airport lounges.
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it, but he thanks her for it.
Well, he's polite. He's well brought up.
He is very well brought up. And Polly was... So I understand completely. If are you sure you don't want to change your mind, because Jan does have a lifestyle, and but also happened to mention, well, we've got a place in Chelsea, which I use for shopping. You could always stay there if the travel would be a bit too much.
That wasn't
you.
To Tom, though. That was to
Tom. She did that. Had the same line. She did the same line on the bridge, the Tarrant Bridge, going to pick up the train, to Tom, and said, "Well, I'm not being forward, Tom. I hope you." Because she apologised for maybe him misunderstanding her motives when she squeezed him a little bit tightly.
I think he understood her motives.
Oh yes,
all too well.
But Polly, she's just glorious. She gives shade at every moment, and. Part of me feels really quite sorry for Polly, because she's just such a colourful character, and also another colourful character. We have a bit more of Ken Masters. Oh,
yes, I'm sure every time we've seen Ken Masters in his house, he's been in bed.
Is he in bed with his top off?
Yes. Yes.
But I really like
as soon as he gets home, he just pops into bed.
Well, he's got Dawn. Dawn. I love Dawn. Dawn's really, really good. So Dawn's his live-in girlfriend. And which is quite amusing, because Dawn is a bit of a dolly bird. So she's big blonde hair, high heels, tight skirt, low cut tops, and things like that. And
it's very much the 1980s page 3 style.
Yeah, sort of Samantha Fox, Essex girly, that type of thing.
Big hair, big
everything,
big accoutrements.
Yeah, accoutrement, and so we first see another scene of Ken reclining in his boudoir.
Yes, watching the snooker.
Watching the snooker, but he's got this really big painting behind him, of a red painting with a tree, and I really quite like that. I'd give that house room, and he's obviously got Dawn, who's she's angling. She's the live-in girlfriend, which I think is interchangeable girlfriend, but I think she's wanting more. She's feeling a little bit isolated, I'm feeling, with Dawn, because she was like, so what is this chandlery? I say, are you going to show me this chandlery? And he's very...
He seems very reluctant.
To introduce her to anything else, because obviously Jan's around there, and Ken Masters is sniffing a little bit around Jan. But I think the thing is that Ken Masters, he's a feminist. I mean, I've realised this, because he's empowering Jan to go further. I mean, admittedly, he has ulterior motives, because he sort of sees there's trouble in the marital stakes at the home, and he's a chap for opportunity, because it becomes apparent that he's got a range of petrol stations as well, and he started working in the petrol station, and 5 years later he bought one. Also, there was an interesting conversation between Ken and Jan in the office, where she's very badly trying to touch type. Oh, she's got these very, very elegant nails, and she's got this tiny little keyboard which she's trying to touch type, and she's looking at the keyboard, and I'm thinking like, she can't find the cue.
Yeah, I suspect you might be right about that. But those were the kind of typewriters that we had back in the 80s. Those really tiny ones.
It was just tiny with a little screen on it.
Yeah,
tiny screen.
Yeah. So basically, the way that worked was that you typed and it appeared on the screen, and then it was transferred onto the paper, so that you could do corrections more easily
before it actually
went onto the paper.
So you didn't have to sort of eradicated the need for Tipex.
Yeah, and also if you typed certain words or sentences regularly, then you could store them.
Oh,
so that if your salutations and all the rest of it could just be automatically typed at the touch of a button.
Oh, so it's like predictive text before predictive text.
Well, it's not predictive text; it's stored text that you then get it to replay.
Ah,
see, I started my career in this era, and these were the things that we had to tackle. But my very first job, I had an IBM Selectric typewriter.
Oh, just the one with the big golf ball daisy wheel type of thing.
Yeah, it was a golf ball typewriter.
Oh, I remember you saying this. It's like when you were printing off all these like statements and things like that, the floor vibrated because
the whole build. This was a bit later on, and we'd upgraded to an Amstrad PCW with daisy wheel printer. And yes, you're absolutely right. And my boss was printing out address labels, which is the sort of thing that we did back then. You knew he was doing it because the whole building would shake and it would take about an hour to print. He did it in bulk.
I'm assuming this was like a concrete building and not like it wasn't
a concrete building. It was an old stone built.
Oh, so it was a stone built. You could imagine sort of with Avril printing off the invoices at the Mermaid Yard, because theirs is more of an elevated porta cabin with wood cladding on.
It's wood built, I guess. Probably you would expect that, though, wouldn't you? In a boatyard to have a properly furnished and turned out.
I think that's the comparison, because you've got the Mermaid Yard and then you've got Ken Masters Chandlery. And Ken Masters is obviously on the waterfront, but Ken is looking to increase his operation.
Yeah, so he's in a bit of a concrete box, isn't he? In the concrete and glass.
You can see there's the traditional
with dinghies outside.
Yeah,
and surfboards or whatever.
I think there was in the first episode, it was like inflatable lilo or something, or inflatable dinghy. I'm sure
it wasn't a lilo. That would be very. They're very down market. No, there were dinghies sort of propped up. I noticed.
Yeah, so it does look like a little mini mart, but there's the comparison is really good. So Ken Masters is then is hearing whispers of discord with regards to Jack and the Mermaid Yard, and he approaches. What's his name?
Bill Sayers.
Bill, who is Jack's right-hand man, or left-hand
man.
Well, you could have been left-handed. You never know. So that sort of puts a worrying thought into Bill, because obviously business is a little bit slack at the Mermaid Yard, although there's the German contract that should be...
Yes, this fantasy German contract.
Should be imminently dropping. And so Bill's a little bit worried now, because that seed of doubt has been introduced. Dawn is there, sort of is introduced to Bill with Ken, and she's like completely and utterly disinterested in anything really which isn't regarding her little orbit, which I think is quite. I think she's quite a complex character as Dawn, and I think where she's also a fighter like Ken, so there's a bit of a kindred spirit. But she's not picking up on the hints and tips where I say Ken is angling for the social hierarchy with regards to having Jan as then the sort of his
giving him inroads, his passport to the Tarrant Glitterati.
Yeah, there's a Tarrant Glitterati. Also, I say there was also mention in this episode with regards to Polly, because I always thought Polly and Jan were long friends. But
No, but we apparently not.
Apparently, say because Jan arrived as with Abby, so Abby's been introduced to the Howard kids once.
Yeah, but Polly arrived just as Lynn was heading off to university.
So, well, maybe she's been there 4 years then.
Yeah, I would have thought so. 4 or I suppose if Lynn's is Lynn on a gap.
No,
gap year?
Lynn's graduated. Lynn's
Right.
finished university. She's taken a year off.
Right.
After finishing uni, and so there must be 3 years difference between Lynn and Leo, and so obviously Abby's been around but hasn't done much, and then she's been sent off to boarding school.
To finishing school. She's
Yeah.
then have to be finished.
She's been off for
Because
finishing.
she was unfinished.
She was unfinished. So, I mean, Lynn sort of mentions a little bit of backstory. And I think it was really well crafted because Abby was introduced to us as in, all right, say, with regards to Polly, I'm going to pick up my daughter. She's been in Switzerland for a year finishing school. It's cost a fortune. And then there's also Lynn has mentioned Abby, that Abby was a useless sailor and she seemed a little bit off kilter because I think Lynn is one of these sort of glitterati kids where everything sort of, she's been boating, she's done everything that has been the socially responsible thing. I don't think she was one of the debutantes that went into the London scene to be launched on the London scene.
Well, we don't get any sense of that. I think she seems very Tarrant.
It's very Tarrant-esque with regards to the social hierarchy. So she's not like upper middle class; she's like middle class.
But she maybe has aspirations.
I think she.
And we learned that she had a boyfriend who tried to pressurise her into moving in, but she turned him down.
Yeah, well, you could imagine that because she just probably doesn't want to. I imagine she's just focused. She's sailing obsessed, and even Jan says in what sort of one of the conversations as well, she's going to go places even if it's in that bloody boat. So, and you can tell that with regards to Lynn. I mean, obviously Lynn has a little romance at the end of this series, but we don't want to do spoilers.
Spoilers, sweetie.
So Leo gets this job with Boise at the garage because Boise, the actor that played Boise, John Chalice in Only Fools and Horses, but the garage.
It is Only Fools and Horses.
Yes. Yeah, it's Boise from Only Fools and Horses.
Yes.
And Jan is a little bit upset that he's working as a petrol pump attendant. And that's where we find out with regards to Ken saying, oh, well, I started in the garage. And he said, well, it's okay, but it's not what I expected to be. Even she's a bit snobby in this. I mean,
well, I guess what you might say is that she wants the best for her children, and that's fair enough. But I think also something that we learn in the dialogue in this episode is that Ken had a wife.
Yes. And I
wonder if that will be picked up in later storylines. Spoilers. It isn't.
I know, and it's bonkers because that would be having that. There seem to be lots of pinpoints where things have been dropped in to conversations and which could be picked up at another point.
Because there's lots of dangling threads.
Yes.
Things that are mentioned in passing that certainly would have potential, and maybe there was an idea there, but with the way that the story developed over the series, it was just never picked up.
No, and I think it's. I mean, that would have been quite delicious. I mean, I've always thought that having a mini Ken Masters, if he had a son or a daughter that,
like Damien.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You could imagine that if you had a storyline with regards to a son or something like that. But so I mean, Dawn, bless her, she's not been invited to go to the chandlery, but she just turns up. And then she's introduced to Jan, and then her heckles are instantly raised.
Well, she's expecting some
dour
frumpy housefrau, and instead we've got
glamorous
Jan with her haircut and her blouse with.
Oh, her blouse was amazing.
Her blouse with. I'm sure it was fried eggs.
It looked like fried eggs from a distance.
Yeah, it turned out it wasn't, but I prefer my version that have fried eggs on the blouse.
I mean, in today's episode, we only had 3 outfit changes for Jan, so it was a slow episode with regards to outfit changes because we had the the really nice off the shoulder sort of cable knit top that she was cooking with.
Well, let's just divert the conversation just for a little moment, and I have to reflect on the fact that really, if you want to cook something, you need to actually have some heat applied to it. So that was very obviously putting onions into a coal pan without any heat, and then tipping cold tomatoes on top of the non-cooking onions, and then suddenly you've got this thing that she's angrily sprinkling cheese on, and then goes into a cold oven. I mean, I'm sorry, but I just wonder whether they just forgot to attach the electric.
And then when she also left the metal spatula in it.
Well, that's going to get very hot. Well, it would get very hot if there was any heat.
Also, she's got a whole range of Le Creuset, gorgeous Le Creuset, and she's using some manky stainless steel pan.
Well, that's fair enough, because we all have our favourite pans. and to be fair, if she's whacking about with a metal spatula, then you're not going to want to do it in your fancy French.
I know.
Cookware.
The kitchen is. It hasn't exactly been staged as a kitchen. It's like a very blank. It's like we've just been to B&Q to get some new light bulbs for our extractor light thing.
I'm sure that's all detail that is fascinating.
We've been ogling over buying a new kitchen, and we've gone to the kitchens, and they're sort of like blank kitchens.
We were fondling splashbacks
and marble worktops, which are very lovely. Need to sell a few more houses. So we had 3 outfit changes. We had the cable knits one, then we had the nice blouse, and then there was another where she was at the workwear, which is a sort of an oversized blouse tied up with a belt, and then there was another outfit which was reclined doing the crosswords, trying to ignore Tom. Then we've got Avril. Now we've seen Avril, and I think she's got a rental cottage because it has got a lot of wallpaper. That's where it's flock wallpaper in the entrance hall. Wow. But Avril was very much Sloane Rangery looking. She was very elegantly dressed.
Yes, I can sort of imagine her in the part of the Bloomsbury sort of set, swanning around the. So we learned the King's Road or whatever.
We learned from this episode that Avril's been to business school. She worked in the city. She's come back, and Jack's been angling to find out why she's come back, and makes an assumption, which is a right assumption, that it was because of a man.
There's always a man.
There's a man.
Always a man.
There's a man involved. So she's renting thatched cottage, which is really quite sweet. Very lovely property.
Yeah. Well, it's called thatched cottage because there's a massive sign on the gate.
Which Jack goes through and leaves it wide open.
Good job she has no livestock.
I know. Or just think, so there's livestock that could have wandered in and eaten her roses.
I know.
It's just tragic.
Eating the thatch.
I know. That's been really bad. So Jack goes in and announces that he's got Tom on the hook for buying into the boatyard.
And Avril's not happy about it.
Avril's not happy. I mean, she's quite devastated. She actually leans, sort of exhausted fashion against this monumental television, which is next to a massive fireplace.
Yeah, so she sits on the fireplace and reclines on the television.
It's one of those big. It's one of those ones which it's not like the ones we had at school where they got wheeled in by the caretaker with a brown overall. It's like the smaller version, which also came with a wheeled track where you could put your Betamax just underneath it.
It's very much like the televisions that we had in my house when I was growing up.
Well, we had one,
and they were rented from DER,
which
no longer exists. I don't think any of these companies really exist anymore. We've got Bright House instead now.
Oh gosh, is Bright House still around?
I have no idea.
I have no idea. That's where people pay for like £2.
Ridiculous.
£2 until 4 generations away.
£2 a week for 100 years.
Yes. So Avril obviously has gone through all the accounts with Tom, and there's a little bit of sort of chemistry. And in fairness, Avril, very, very stunning, very, very gorgeous. And
of course, the accounts are kept manually in big ledgers.
Yeah,
that took me back to my early
accountancy days.
working time.
Yeah, and it it was just really nice. The chemistry is sizzling there, and Tom is trying to get some money together, so he's got his redundancy payout, and it goes to the bank to see if he can buy in, because he needs to get, I think, was it 150,000 or something like that. I think
he's sort of working out. He's got his golden handshake. He's got his shares in Southern Aviation. He's got some savings, but
he doesn't want to put the house at risk.
He doesn't want to put the house at risk, which is quite right.
Yeah.
But there was a bit of a shortfall, and
I think of 20,000,
20 or 30,000, something like that.
So he could raise 10,000 on his savings, and
the bank wouldn't
short.
lend.
No,
the bank wouldn't lend without security.
No, and so the only thing he's got is to put the flying fish up for sale,
fish.
which he's reluctant to do, because obviously he has designed the flying fish. He's done it from start to finish.
Yeah.
And
Lynn loves the flying fish.
Lynn is very much a daddy's girl,
yes,
and would hate to lose her sailing rights, because obviously she's a bit of a sailor. And so Avril said, "Oh well, I can see what we can do to get it sold, because obviously it's front page news because it won the cup on the race." So we had that,
and of course, meanwhile, Tom and Avril are sort of working out that between them
they would have majority
shares. So the concern is that Jack, being the old-fashioned stick in the mud, who just wants Tom's money but doesn't want anything to change, even though it's clearly a business model for the Mermaid Yard that just doesn't work. He wants to keep everything the same. He just wants Tom's money, then Tom can beggar off into the sunset, and Jack will presumably spend all that money and then end up back in the same boat, perilous situation.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
However, Tom has got ideas on how the Mermaid Yard could be run. Avril is on his side, and so
there's an allegiance there.
Together they could end up in a majority position and force through the changes. There's things to look forward to there.
Oh my gosh, I know.
There'll be fireworks. Yes. Fireworks at the Mermaid Yard, which is full of wooden boats, so that'd be very dangerous.
Yes, yeah, very much so. You don't want to have fireworks not around wooden boats or plastic ones; they melt. So we need to do a little bit of coverage with Polly, sort of my fantasy mother, because she's so fabulous. She goes to London to pick up Abby, and the first time we meet Abby, so they're at some sort of fashion show in a restaurant.
Yes, I wasn't convinced. I was not convinced by that. I was just waiting for people to say, "Do you mind? I'm trying to eat my dinner."
So Polly is really trying to engage with Abby. I mean, in fairness, bless her. She's doing her best, and she's saying, "Well, okay. So you've had a year out in Switzerland, and you've got this dour, sort of dumpy daughter."
She doesn't look happy.
She doesn't look happy. She looks miserable. She's playing with her food. She's not looking at the fashion thing or even feigning any interest.
At least when she was in Tenko, she had a really good reason to look unhappy, because she was all sweaty in a prisoner of war camp.
So she's not sweaty here. She's there, sort of like pushing salad around the plate, watching these models wander around, looking all sort of trying to look all gorgeous in some of these really hideous frocks. I mean, one of them, it looked like sort of an extra from a very low rent Robin Hood, with sort of like Maid Marian things with like massive big shoulders.
Yeah, but she didn't have a quiver or a hat with a feather in it.
I think the floor quivered, because some of those models were a little bit on the hefty side, as they were trying to look glamorous in between the tables with sort of the polycotton.
There'll be trouble for that comment, Jonathan.
Sorry.
I predict. Yes, I can see a brouhaha on the horizon.
Brouhaha. Yeah. So there was lots of shoulder pads, lots of hippie action, and so Polly said, "Oh, well, I'm going to buy you a brand new wardrobe." Really trying to engage in Abby. I know probably she's not the best mother in the world, as in like the whole mumsy sort of thing, but she's really trying. So, we're going to buy you a new wardrobe, and I was like, "No, I've got clothes at home." She said, "Oh no, I've thrown all those out," which, fair enough. I mean, she's got two massive suitcases.
Yeah. But let's just turn that around a little bit. Clearly, Abby is troubled.
Yes.
There are things that
Afoot.
are not right for her. Does Polly pick up on any of the clues? No, does she?
No,
No, she doesn't.
No, I mean, she hasn't asked, how are you, what's wrong. She's just trying to jolly it up. She doesn't want to know other people's problems. She
Even her own daughters.
Yes. Well, I mean, she's sent her off to finishing school to have a jolly good time, to be socially inclusive. But
And not to get her out of her hair?
Possibly, because she is... Well, maybe Abby wasn't bright enough to go to university, because Lynn went to university, and because she's got that.
She didn't come across as the sharpest knife in the
No,
box.
she didn't come across. No, I mean she's gonna the whole Lynn type of model. I went to school with a few girls like that, and
maybe Abby and Leo are well matched in that neither of them wanted to go to university. Neither of them. Maybe she just didn't see the point of it.
But anyway, she accepted to go get carted off to Switzerland. But then again, if she hated her mum that much,
maybe she was just glad to
get away
and do some skiing.
Yeah, well, she doesn't look the most athletic type, does she really? Anyway,
says us, because obviously you can't see us, but we're athletic as you could possibly wish for. Aren't we?
Yes, yeah. We're a little bit below Fatima Whitbread, but a lot better than certain overweight politicians.
No, let's not go down that road.
But so she's like, okay, then we'll go and get some new clothes. And then the next scene we see with them both, we've got Polly arriving at Tarrant Station. Which does look a bit dour. I mean, that man handling two big enormous suitcases, and Polly saying, "Oh, it was so much better when there was porters around." When were there porters on, like, sort of
on
outer reaches stations?
Commuter railway stations. Not since Queen Victoria was on the throne, I'm sure.
Or where Poirot was like nestling up to on the Warrant Express, looking who's murdered. This was the murder victim. So she arrives, and then sort of Polly sort of relegates someone to go and lift the suitcases, and
some random bloke
she flirts with, and then
invites them to her pad in Chelsea.
Use her Chelsea flat, which she uses for shopping, and he looks wildly interested. But I mean, I say Polly is just she gives shade at everything. Yeah. And then
meanwhile, Abby is gazing at the railway tracks
as the train goes on,
clearly seeing that as being a possible way out of the situation.
Flinging herself off the platform, but then she drudgingly lollops after Polly, dragging her suitcase with her. But she's got a whole range of Liberty things, so she's had a jolly good time shopping in Liberty. Well, Polly's had a jolly good time.
Yeah, Polly's had a jolly good time. I think Abby's probably had a fairly miserable time being dragged round shops by her mother.
I mean, because in fairness, they say if you've flown from Switzerland to Heathrow and dragged out to lunch, the last thing you really want to do is go shopping. I mean, when you've travelled, all you want to do is go home and get changed. You don't want to drag your suitcases around. I mean, I wonder what they did with all those suitcases.
Well, they put them in the left luggage.
Oh, you used to be able to do that. You don't do that.
I think you still can. It's all automated now, but yeah. Large railway stations, I believe, still have facilities.
I didn't realise they still did that in the UK. I mean, I know that when we lived in Germany, they did that in Germany. You could leave your locker stuff, or like we did, we left our camera on the train. But we found that came back to us.
That had nothing to do with left luggage. That was just carelessness.
Dashing from one platform to another. And then, oops, where's the camera? Oh, there it goes.
But we did get it back.
That was a bit of a random thing.
It was. We were just walking down the street.
We were walking down the street.
Well, actually, we were walking down the street towards the lost property, just on the off chance someone might have handed it in. And then someone was walking the other direction and said, "Have you lost a camera?"
We went,
yes, because they'd looked at the picture. It was a digital. They'd looked at the pictures and they recognised us.
Oh, we got our camera back.
And this was right outside the house where David Bowie and
Ziggy Stardust
and Ziggy Stardust.
Iggy Pop, not Ziggy Stardust. Where did that come from? Well, Ziggy.
Yes, the house that they shared in Berlin for a while. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, that's our little Berlin
story. It's a small
story.
world. So, that's one of our many Berlin stories.
Yeah. But overall, I think this episode was really, really good. It rollicks along really nicely. It's really tightly paced. And I think...
And at the end of the episode,
Well, Tom says to Jan, I'd really like to do this. Jan really goes, no, not allowed. And then Tom
stomps off.
And
to the mermaid yard.
But he gets a phone call from Abby saying, I've got a buyer for the fish.
From Abby?
No, not Abby, from Avril, sorry.
From Avril.
So Avril phones up the Howard residence and said, I've got a buyer for the fish if you're interested. And then that's sort of like all his plans drop in, because otherwise if he was reluctant to sell the fish. Yeah. And I think if they hadn't had a buyer, he would have probably gone and taken the sort of the designing airport lounges job.
Yes. Then of course he says, Jan and I will chat about this later tonight, and we're going, no, you're going to shout very loudly about this.
Well, no, he does mention it, and Jan reacts really badly and said, look, I've built this home up. And you can understand it. So
absolutely.
We find out that Jan met Tom at Southern Aviation.
She was a secretary.
She was a PA. She would have been
an executive assistant.
Executive assistant. She would be an executive PA, and she met Tom on her first lunch.
And he took her away from all that.
And then they
all that gasoline.
And it does sound as though they've had to scrimp and save to get where they are, which is fair enough. And Tom is like, I don't want to be 50 and not have done anything with my life, and is trying to put the foot down. And then Jan loses it, and then that instantly pushes Tom's buttons, and then Tom loses it again. So like, I want to do this, and you can sort of understand where Tom's coming from, but I relate completely to Jan, because it's just like well, let's sell everything, get a boat. It's just we've worked so hard to get what we've got, and she's worked so hard. She's built up a family. Lynn is moulded onto what she thinks Lynn should be. Leo's a little bit of a worry, but his heart's in the right place, and she's got her life, and she's got her friend, and she's got her lunch. She's got a little part-time job. And then she's thinking this foundation where everything's being on is being eroded. And then, so she's reacted badly. Rather than try to be supportive and let's talk through it, let's see what we can do, let's see how I can help this work. And then Tom dashes off to the mermaid yard and says, get the paperwork out, I need to sign it now. And Avril turns around, very quiet. In their fairness, their chemistry was really, really good, because Avril is that calmness that Tom needs. He doesn't want the stressy thing, so he's going into what he's thinking is calm waters, which we know full well it's not going to be, because we've got 6 glorious series. But anyway, I love this episode. It's really good. But we only had three outfit changes from Jan, so she needs to up the quota for the next episode.
Well, I'm sure once. Because I'll be talked about Jan's being propositioned by Ken to set up the fashion business.
Oh, yes.
Don't miss that.
Oh, no, it's not the fashion. He's wanting to set up a retail stop, so it's a one-stop shop for the yachty types, the marina things. So showing this empty unit with lots of boxes around. Say, look, it's what I want to do, and I want you to find the stock to put in there. So
because you have marvellous taste. It's obviously not seen the inside of her. Oh, did I say that? did I say that out loud? Oops.
Shush. Well, I don't think we'd have it. I don't think we'd get their wallpaper man round to put anything up in our house, because they say the seams in their living room.
Yes, there were.
I think it was just badly lit.
It was badly wallpapered.
So Ken has offered Jan a full-time job running that part of the operation. He's a bit loosey-goosey with regards to what it actually would involve, but he's got an idea, and I think the idea is a jolly good idea. And so Jan has the opportunity to become her own person. Or initially he has ulterior motives, because he wants to sort of get in her her underwear, sort of
her
nether
underwear,
regions.
her underwear drawer.
And so I mean, he sees Jan as that sort of golden ticket.
The golden ticket.
And in fairness, I think she probably would be. So that's how it ends. But it's glorious. So we've got episode 3 next week.
Yes.
Now, We do the Howard's Way. Who would we recast
Yes.
if we had a reboot? So last week we had a few suggestions.
So last week we were wondering who would be cast as Tom Howard.
I think Jack Davenport.
Yes, we know.
And you thought Tom Hardy.
I did.
And then we put that out to our listeners.
On the Twitter sphere.
It exploded! I mean, Carrie Owen, who was the actual wife of
Glyn Owen,
who would play Jack Rolfe, suggested, and it was actually quite a good suggestion.
So see, she has suggested Glyn's son, Lloyd Owen, from Monarch of the Glen and other such programs. And actually, you know what? I think that's a really good suggestion.
I think that would be a really, really good idea. However, I think he would probably be quite a good character for Jack. But
I think he's too young for Jack.
Too young.
But we're not casting Jack.
Not yet. No, today we are thinking casting Jan. So, thinking about Jan, it's a bit of an awkward one, really, because it's just has to be someone who has got that gravitas. But I mean, a Joanna Lumley-esque.
Too
old, obviously.
No, sorry,
Joanna,
if you're listening, but we're just having to face facts.
So for Joanna, it's quite a.
Now I suggested
for
Joanna. We're not recasting Joanna Lumley.
No, recasting Joanna. No. But for Jan.
So one of my suggestions was Amelia Fox.
She's very good.
Yes.
And I think, so she could do very well.
Another suggestion might be Ruth Wilson.
Ruth Wilson?
Yes, from Luther and his Dark Materials.
Oh! I think maybe she'd be a really good Avril.
Perhaps, but we're not casting Avril.
Avril. I'm really at a stomach for Jan, because Jan is Jan. And it's really, really weird because it's
you just can't make the separation between actress and character.
No,
can you?
Because it is really, really difficult, because I don't think there's anyone that has that.
How about Kristen Scott Thomas?
Out of
left field. Out of left field.
Oh.
Now I'm not sure if she's. I've not researched her. I don't know if she's sort of in the right ballpark for age or so on. But she's crossed my mind.
That's. I'm just completely flummoxed. I mean.
Well, I think we're going to have to throw this open to the listeners, then, aren't we?
So, who would you cast as Jan? I'm going to have a really good think about this, because I've been thinking about it and thinking, but there's no one actually that. I mean, I think it would probably be best to have an unknown and go completely.
Yeah, but that doesn't really do very much for this segment in the show.
No, it doesn't.
I think we should cast, I don't know, Frederica McGonagall as
who's Frederica McGonagall?
She's a complete unknown that you've never heard of, and she'd be marvellous.
Oh, how
marvellous.
Fabulous.
So we're kind of stumped, really. So
actually, I've got an idea. Who was there was in the series This Life? There was a person that played Rachel, and she's also she was in Vanity. She was the main lead. I think not in Vanity. Was it in Vanity Fair? Hold on. So I do apologise, dear listeners.
As always, our research is impeccable.
So hold on. So cast of. Okay.
So Natasha
Little. Yes.
That you're suggesting.
And
she's broadly in the right. She's just a little bit younger than me, so she's broadly in the right.
So she was Lady Caroline Langbourne in The Night Manager. That was really, really good. and also she was Christina Moxham in the BBC miniseries 13. So I think the thing with the character for Jan, it can't be someone that is too affiliated with anything too big.
So you're ruling out soap stars?
Well, I mean, I think a soap star. Well, we don't really watch the soaps, but
So we're saying no to Sarah Lancashire then, as Jan.
oh, actually, I think Sarah Lancashire would probably because she is.
Don't go casting other men. We've not got there yet.
No,
so don't go casting other parts.
The thing is, Sarah Lancashire is a character actor. I think you'd need to have character actors because you don't want to have. I mean, because Joan Collins, when she went to Dynasty, Joan Collins is Joan Collins.
Well, Joan Collins is Joan Collins.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's Alexis, wasn't it?
Alexis Carrington, Colby Dexter Morell, or something like that.
So
I just made that up.
I think that's the thing. You can't have anyone. I think it needs to have I think it needs to be a character actor. I know Howard's Way was really dismissed as being a bit melodrama and everything, and it was never. Although it would try to compete, or it was the media said it was competing with Dallas and Dynasty and that sort of thing. It was its own right. It had its own energy.
So we're not casting Joan Collins then as Jan.
No. Well, maybe she could be Laura. Right age.
I have my own ideas for Laura.
Oh,
but we're not casting Laura.
We can't cast.
We're not
We can
casting.
only recast.
We're not casting.
We can only recast the actors in the series.
And one a week.
One a week.
So I will keep my suggestions for Avril and Polly and et al. Under my hat for now.
Tomorrow, the next episode, I think we get to meet Jan's mother, who's amazing. I love her to bits. But we'll have to hold that one back.
I used to have a book that was written by the actress who played. She wrote mystery stories. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
We'll
talk
anyway,
about that next week.
So if everyone we do a tweet along every Sunday at 8 o'clock with the hashtag Howard's Way.
Or one word.
You can follow us on social media networks at Antique Dust. We would love to hear you and all your lovely Howard's Way stories.
Yes.
It would be fabulous.
Yeah. Has Jonathan told you about his impending cardigan? We'll save that for next week.
We'll save that next week.
Dun, dun, dun,
my zip-up cardigan.
A zip-up cardigan.
Marvellous. Anyway, so that's farewell from me, Jonathan.
And it's goodbye from me, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Howard's Way podcast from Antique Dust.